I have shared everything about you with my dad. I never planned to tell him everything. At first, I only mentioned you in passing, just enough to let him know you existed, but not enough for him to ask too many questions. I wasn't ready for his scrutiny, for the sharp gaze that had always seen through every lie, every hesitation. But then, as things between us grew deeper, I found myself saying more. It started small. How we met. How we talked for hours that first night, both of us too caught up to notice the time slipping away. Then came the details I hadn't expected to share. The way you laugh with your whole heart, the way you overthink things when you care too much, the way you hold your coffee cup with both hands, as if savoring the warmth like a quiet comfort. And before I knew it, I had told him everything. I told him how you challenge me, how you don't let me get away with half-truths or empty words, how you make me want to be a better version of myself, even on days when I don't feel like trying. I told him about your fears, the ones you only whispered late at night when the world felt quieter, about the things you lost, the wounds that hadn't quite healed. And then I told him the hardest part, that I was afraid too. Afraid of what he'd think. Afraid of whether he'd accept you the way I did. Afraid that no matter how much I wanted you, his disapproval would plant doubts I couldn't ignore. He listened. He always does. His silence stretched between us, his expression unreadable, and I felt like a child again, waiting, hoping for approval. I wasn't sure would come. When he finally spoke, his voice was steady. You must love her a lot. I opened my mouth, ready to argue that love wasn't the point, that this was about acceptance, about understanding. But the words caught in my throat, and I realized he wasn't asking, he was stating the truth. I hadn't yet said out loud. Yes, I admitted. There was another pause, and then you already know what you have to do. I frowned. What does that mean? He leaned forward, his gaze softer than I expected. It means my opinion doesn't matter as much as yours does. I stared at him, trying to make sense of his words. But you always said, forget what I said, he interrupted. You've already made your choice, haven't you? I thought about you, about the way you looked at me, uncertain, always waiting for a sign that I wouldn't leave. Yes, I said again, this time with more certainty. He nodded, leaning back in his chair. Then stop waiting for permission. His words settled over me, shifting something inside, and for the first time, I realized I didn't need him to accept you, because I already had. I could still feel the weight of his words as I left the room. For years I had let his approval, or the fear of not having it, shape my choices. Every decision, every relationship, always measured against an invisible standard I was never sure I met. But this time was different. This time, I wasn't asking for permission. That realization should have brought relief. Instead, it made me restless. I thought about calling you, telling you what happened. But then I hesitated. Would you see this as a step forward? Or would you hear my doubt in the spaces between my words? I knew you. Knew how you read between the lines. Knew you would ask if I was sure. And that was the problem, because deep down, part of me still wondered, was I? It wasn't about love, that I was certain of. It was about everything else. The way my father's acceptance, even when unspoken, had always been a part of my identity. The way I had built myself around his expectations without even realizing it. Would he truly stand by me if I chose this path? Or was he just preparing me for the possibility that he wouldn't? The next morning I found myself standing outside his office, fingers curled into fists. I didn't knock right away. He looked up when I finally entered, eyes scanning my face like he already knew why I was there. Maybe he did. I need to know the truth, I said, my voice firmer than I expected. About what? About how you really feel. He set his pen down. Does it matter? It does to me. For a long moment he studied me. Then he sighed, rubbing his temple. You think I don't approve? I didn't answer. He exhaled through his nose. You want honesty? All right, he said, leaning forward. I won't pretend this is what I imagined for you. My stomach clenched, but he continued. That doesn't mean I'm against it. I blinked. So what are you saying? He laced his fingers together. I'm saying this isn't about me, it's about you. If you want her, then be with her. But be sure, because if you doubt it now, that doubt will only grow. His words settled in my chest, heavy and undeniable. Was I sure? I thought about the way you looked at me when you didn't think I was watching. The way your presence had become my comfort, my home. I already had my answer. Without another word I turned and walked out, my phone already in my hand. It was time for you to hear everything too. I stepped outside, feeling the weight of the conversation settle in my chest. The air was thick, heavy, as if it carried the unspoken words still lingering between my father and me. I stared down at my phone, your name glowing softly on the screen. My thumb hovered over the call button. I wanted to tell you everything. Every hesitation, every unfiltered thought, every quiet fear I hadn't admitted to myself until now. But would you want to hear it? Would it make you question us? I took a deep breath and finally hit dial. The ringing felt longer than usual. Or maybe it was just my nerves playing tricks on me. When you answered, your voice was warm, familiar, but I could hear the question in your tone before I even spoke. Hey, I said, forcing my voice to stay steady. Hey, you okay? I talked to my dad. A pause, and I exhaled. I told him everything about you, about us. Silence stretched between us, thick with meaning. I could almost hear your thoughts racing, piecing together what this meant. And what did he say? You finally asked. He didn't reject you. The words felt strange coming out, as if I was still trying to process them myself. But he wanted to make sure I was certain that I wasn't choosing something I'd regret. I heard your sharp inhale, the way you swallowed back whatever emotion threatened to surface. And are you? The question was soft, but it hit harder than I expected. I looked up at the sky, at the way the clouds drifted lazily across the fading sun. I had spent so much time worrying about my father's approval, about how he would see you, that I had forgotten to ask myself the most important thing. Yes. My voice didn't waver. I am. There was a shift on the other end, something in your breathing that told me you had needed to hear that more than anything else. Good, you murmured. Because I don't want to be a decision you have to defend. I just want to be yours. A lump formed in my throat. You are. Another pause. Then, softer. So what happens now? I glanced back at the house, at the window where I knew my father was probably still sitting, watching, thinking. Now, I said, I want you to meet him. The silence that followed wasn't hesitation. It was something else. A quiet understanding. Okay, you finally whispered. And in that moment I knew this was just the beginning. I sat in my car outside my father's house, my fingers drumming against the steering wheel. The thought of bringing you here, of having you meet the man who had shaped so much of my life, made my stomach tighten. The last conversation still echoed in my mind. He hadn't outright rejected you, but his words had been careful, measured. He wanted to know more. He wanted to see if you were someone who fit into the life he had envisioned for me. I knew this moment had to happen. I had shared everything about you with him. Your past, your dreams, the way you made me feel like I was more than just a reflection of his expectations. But telling him and letting him see for himself were two different things. I reached for my phone and sent a quick message. I'm outside. You ready? A few moments later, your response came. I'm here, coming down now. I watched as you stepped out of your building, taking slow, steady strides toward my car. The nerves you were trying to hide were still visible in the way your fingers gripped your bag strap, the way your lips pressed together for a brief moment before you met my eyes. I unlocked the door, and you slipped inside, exhaling as you settled into the seat. "You okay?" I asked. I should be asking you that. Your voice was softer than usual, edged with something I couldn't quite place. I let out a small breath, gripping the wheel. I told him everything, but now he needs to see for himself. I don't know what he's expecting. You turned to me then, your expression unreadable. "And what are you expecting?" The question caught me off guard. I hadn't thought about it that way. I had been so focused on what my father might say, on how he might react, that I hadn't taken a moment to acknowledge what I wanted from this meeting. I looked at you, really looked at you, the way you sat with quiet confidence, despite the uncertainty of the moment. The way your eyes held questions, but no fear. "I just want him to see you the way I do," I admitted. You held my gaze for a moment, before nodding. "Then let's go." I put the car in drive, my heart pounding, as we pulled away from the curb. The road to my father's house felt shorter than usual. Too soon, we were there. The house loomed ahead, familiar, and yet suddenly intimidating. I turned off the engine, my fingers still wrapped tightly around the wheel. "Before we go in," you said, your voice steady, "I need to know something." I turned to you, waiting. "If he doesn't accept me, if he has doubts, will it change anything for you?" The weight of your words settled between us, heavy and unmovable. I didn't hesitate. "No." A small, almost imperceptible shift in your shoulders, as if something inside you had eased. "Okay," you whispered. With that, we stepped out of the car, side by side. The front door was just a few steps away, but it felt like a threshold to something much bigger. I knocked once. The sound echoed in the stillness of the afternoon. Footsteps approached from the other side. The door creaked open, and then there he was. My father's gaze flickered to me, then to you. His expression unreadable. The moment we had both been waiting for had finally arrived. He stood in the doorway, his eyes scanning you, taking in everything at once. His expression was unreadable, but I knew him well enough to sense the thoughts running through his mind. "Come in," he finally said. Stepping aside, you moved first, your steps even, your posture steady. I followed behind, shutting the door, as the weight of the moment settled around us. The living room was just as I remembered, neat, structured, no unnecessary decorations, just the essentials. My father believed in function over sentiment, and that extended to the way he handled relationships too. "Have a seat," he said, motioning to the couch. You sat gracefully, folding your hands together in your lap, and I took the spot beside you. My father settled into his chair, across from us, his hands resting on his knees. A silence stretched between us, thick and expectant. "So," he finally said, his eyes shifting from me to you, "he tells me he's serious about you." Your gaze didn't waver. "I'm serious about him too." He nodded slowly, as if weighing those words, measuring the conviction in them. "He also tells me you've been through a lot." His tone wasn't judgmental, but it was careful, probing. You exhaled lightly, tilting your head. "Haven't we all?" A flicker of something passed through his eyes. Amusement, respect. It was hard to tell. "Fair point," he murmured. I could feel the tension coiling inside me. I knew this wasn't a casual conversation. My father was deliberate. He didn't just listen, he analyzed, dissected, searching for anything he considered a red flag. "Tell me something," he said, leaning forward slightly. "What does my son see in you that makes him think you belong in his future?" I opened my mouth to speak, but you placed a gentle hand on my knee, stopping me. "You should ask him that," you said, your voice steady. My father's brows lifted slightly at your response, and then his sharp gaze turned to me. I swallowed, feeling the weight of the moment. I had told him so much about you already, but now, sitting here looking at him, I knew I had to say it differently. She doesn't just support me, she challenges me, I said, my voice firm. She sees the parts of me that most people overlook, and she doesn't let me hide from them. She doesn't need me, but she chooses me, and I choose her. A long silence followed. My father's gaze flickered between us before he finally exhaled through his nose, a sign that he was deep in thought. That's a strong answer, he admitted. You didn't react, just watched him, waiting. Then he leaned back, his arms crossing. Tell me something about yourself that he hasn't already told me. I turned to you, wondering what you'd say. You smiled slightly, but there was no hesitation in your voice. I don't believe in proving my worth to people who have already made up their minds about me, but I do believe in earning trust. One step at a time. My father's lips pressed together in thought. The tension in the room didn't vanish, but something shifted. A small crack in the wall he had built between acceptance and doubt. All right, he finally said, his voice softer than before. Let's see if that's true. And with that, the real test began.